Stephen had never been poor, so his life has no heartbreaking stories of poverty, like taking a part-time job at a nuclear power plant or sleeping under a bridge. Before he got into movies, Stevie was already rich. He had his own Aikido club, which was attended by various producers and heads of Hollywood studios. The way he got into great movies was thanks to good connections, or simply put, through favors. These connections, however, were not with the most prominent workers in the film industry. So to get into a great movie, Stephen had to put a lot of elbow grease in. This effort had great results, though. As they say, diligence is the mother of success. Stephen climbed to the top of Hollywood Olympus very rapidly. It took him only 4 years and 5 films to get on the list of the highest-paid actors. The first film work for the actor was the action film Above the Law. The name of his character from this film gave it an unofficial title, Nico, and the movie enjoyed great popularity in the US. To get a role in this film, Seagal had to demonstrate his high level of combat training to the management of Warner Brothers. Important bosses from Warner were horrified, watching as Seagal tossed 30 of his students in the ring of his Aikido school. He was able to cut down several partners at once. After that, the studio immediately agreed to sign him for the main role. Stephen later admitted that it took him several days to stage this play. After the success of the movie Above the Law in cinemas, there was a real boom in Aikido in America. Stephen realized that he would now be unable to work in film and school at the same time. Then he sold all his assets. The actor took a long, and painstakingly long time to choose the script for his second film, for he wanted to create something unique. That's how the movie Hard to Kill was born, in which a failed mafia hit attempt puts Seagal's character in a coma for 7 years. After he wakes up, he regains his strength and goes for revenge. The success of the film was phenomenal, with Stephen waking up famous. From a budget of $10 million, just the US box office brought in $50 million. If you factor in inflation, these days it would have been a movie with a budget of $23 million, which would have grossed just under $117 million. This was followed by 2 more films, Marked for Death and Out for Justice, which both gathered decent reviews from the box office. Marked for Death, by the way, was considered the most violent action film in Seagal's career. The Rating Organization of America recognized this film as the most bloody and brutal film of 1990, and this is taking into account the fact that the audience was shown a cut version. To get the desired rating, the creators of the picture cut a lot of scenes with broken arms, legs, and necks. In general, each new film with Seagal gathered more individual tickets at the cinema's box office than previously. In this regard, Seagal's success is comparable only with the rise of famous Belgian guy Jean-Claude Van Damme. Stephen's international fame had come easy to him, but it also played a cruel joke on him at this part of his career. The beginning of the end for the actor was his biggest box office movie, Under Siege. After the film had collected $160 million in cinemas, Seagal was struck with star fever, leading to dire consequences for him. It is especially dangerous when it is coupled with a very different character, which he had for his role. After Under Siege hit the big screens, the great lover of scenes and breaking legs and arms of various villains suddenly decided to become a great director as well. Well, a talented person should be talented in everything. In this quest, Stephen was supported by 2 Hollywood studios. 20th Century Fox offered Seagal to direct the film Code of Honor. The film was to be similar to those in which Seagal played. The Italian mafia was under attack, which happened to be on the way-raging hero. The film company offered Steven Seagal full creative control, the director's chair, the chair of the producer, and the lead role. The only conditions were the 20th Century Fox studio script and budget. They gave the script, and the budget was not to go over the $30 million mark. Another studio that agreed to the directorial debut of Seagal was the studio Warner Brothers. They offered the same deal with one exception. Stephen could take any script that he likes. The cherry on top here was Seagal's opportunity to use his leverage to get what he wanted from the studio. After the success of Under Siege, Warner Studios wanted Seagal in Under Siege 2, Dark Territory. And knowing this, Stephen was increasing his appetite in every way, forcing the studio to increase the budget for his directorial debut. When the estimated budget for Steven Seagal's new film exceeded $40 million, the talented actor rejected 20th Century Fox. He agreed to star in Under Siege 2 and chose a script for his directorial debut. The choice fell to the film Spirit Warrior, which later evolved into the film On Deadly Ground. Filming the movie was a real disaster. Stephen was constantly making changes to the script, fighting with the stuntmen, and quarreling with his friends. The budget for On Deadly Ground went up to $50 million over the shooting period. This is quite an impressive amount for the mid-90s. After unsuccessful test screenings, studios asked Seagal to reduce the timing of the movie by 30 minutes. The culprit was the incredible drag. Part of the test group simply fell asleep at the screening. Steve had wanted to make the ending in the spirit of the trilogy The Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson. That's when the main plot is complete and the audience is shown another 30 minutes of characters rejoicing, saying goodbye, having a drink, and all that sort of thing. Seagal had 20 minutes to show nature. Chipmunks running through the woods, deer, whales jumping out of the water, and so on. That is, for 20 minutes of the film, nature thanked Steven Seagal for saving it. The failure was very powerful. On a production budget of $50 million, the film could earn only $39 million at the box office. Steven Seagal won the Golden Raspberry as the worst director, and Warner Studios decided to withdraw the film from international distribution so as not to lose even more money. Perhaps Seagal could have been saved by the next 2 high-budget films he was already signed on for, but Under Siege 2 failed to live up to expectations, and Executive Decision suddenly stopped being the film where Seagal shined. If Seagal had taken seriously the sound of the bell ringing over On Deadly Ground, maybe Under Siege 2 would have been a slightly different film, but the star-turned-actor wrote off the failure of one film as a mere accident. In this film, Steven Seagal for the first time began to use a belly band. The actor swore to the studio and producers that he would gradually get himself into shape, but this, as we now know, did not happen. On top of that, Seagal also managed to get into the final editing of the film, completely ignoring the opinion of the director. It even seemed to come to a fight. The final straw on Seagal's status as a superstar in 1995 was a raging scandal in Hollywood. Steven was accused of domestic violence, and then he was accused of sexual harassment. Kurt Russell, who was also invited to play a role in the movie Executive Decision, refused to work with Seagal after hearing such news. Most likely, if Steven had not had 2 failures in a row, the studio would have turned a blind eye to the scandals and the opinion of Kurt Russell. Who knows, maybe Russell himself would have been kicked out of the film. But the stars aligned differently, and Steven Seagal's character was quickly killed off, and John Leguizamo's role in Executive Decision was greatly expanded. The whole snowballing thing has severely crippled the actor's career. He was no longer in big-budget films. His other films failed one after another, and 5 years after the release of On Deadly Ground, Steven moved to the small screen. Seagal could only get a decent role once, in the film by Robert Rodriguez, Machete. Like Van Damme, Steven was ruined by an inflated sense of self-importance. Realizing where his career was going, Steven stopped taking care of himself, and by the end of the 90s did not fit in the screen. Many people do not think of Seagal as an actor at all, and mocked his acting skills, but agree that watching him on screen was much more pleasant than most of the current actors who are considered great talents. Charisma is still very important in movies, and Steven Seagal had it. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and stay tuned.